Hey, I'm Sadi and welcome to Sadi's Tea, taking a look at one of my dream kits to own, the HGUC Johnny Ridden's High Mobility Zaku 2 R2. For those who don't know, Johnny Ridden is a Zeon ace known for piloting high mobility suits and his signature red color, which gave him the nickname the Crimson Lightning. And the High Mobility R2 is by far his most iconic MS, always associated with him in one way or another. So, having fallen in love with the many depictions of Johnny Ridden, I wanted to do a very in-depth look into his only mainline HGUC kit and gush about this kit because that's just what we do here on Sadi's Tea. So, the packaging. It's the typical HGUC style box, with the number on the side saying that this is 166 in the lineup and that it originates from the MSV model line. Mine is a modern reprint with the Bandai Namco logo on top, but the bottom corner does show that this was released all the way back in 2013. And I'm not sure if this is what Naochika Morishita was going for, but this illustration really reminds me of a specific panel from MSV Battle Chronicle, where Major Johnny Ridden and 2 Richtdom units are intercepting Federation supply lines to Luna 2, taking down Magellan-class battleships, and it's even depicted here down on the bottom of the box. Or it's just Sadi reading too deep into things. What's surprising? Upon opening the box, I got this ugly shot of the 7 main Kyoka polystyrene runners. This part was filmed ages ago, it will be better next time, I promise. I am so sorry. I do, thankfully, have closer-up shots of the Polycap PC001 runner and the runner for the pipes that's cast in a flexible polystyrene. The main runners that we get are just the 5 from the high mobility kits, with different sections gated on for this kit's specific pieces. And for the Johnny Ridden custom, we do also get 2 more runners. One for the giant bazooka and black forearm pieces that are the only ones labeled specifically for this kit, leaving us with unused red forearms, the R1 shoulder pad though missing its 3rd spike. There's also the standard Zaku command fin, and the Zaku's full head dome, all of these being great scraps for customs. Of course, to build the kit, we have the typical HGUC style manual, and hey, it's the other high mobility Zakus, thanks for reminding me that I really want them. Being a simple high grade, the build is quite easy to follow with a lot of larger, recognizable parts. And along with the then standardized joint system, the build for the Johnny Ridden Zaku only took me around a solid hour and a half to complete, and the end result is this absolutely gorgeous looking model. When this kit was first released, the original Johnny Ridden Zaku had been out for almost 30 years, and I just love how this neoclassical design went about in giving us a modern update. Almost all of the details are faithfully untouched, but the shapes and proportions have been refined to be more compact and cohesive, giving us a sleek and gorgeous silhouette. It's giving Katoki line art for the old HGUC Zaku 2 mold, as well as for the xenography figures. Not sure if that means Katoki worked on this kit though. Honestly, it's neat how this kit basically serves as a bridge between the classic HGUC Zaku and the modern revived Zaku. Now mine is the bootleg, and yes, I did turn it into the Shin Matsunaga custom out of my sheer desperation to own something from him. But we can still see how vastly different both of these kits look, with how the revived kit's aesthetics takes heavily from its older brother, the Master Grade 2.0. For as different as the proportions on both of the kits are, they still look really good next to each other, and also scale really well, with them being both 12.5 centimeters, so proper 1/144th scale. Neither kit is inherently better, but I do very much prefer how clean and tidy the high mobility kit looks. It's just so sleek and well put together, but I do wish that the chest was just as wide as the revived kits. And this cylinder also sticks out too much, so I'm probably going to fix those myself. On the topic of fixes, there's some obvious ones like the seams on the shins, around the entire forearm, and on the spiked shoulder pad, though luckily the yellow spikes are separated so they still remain as a solid piece. There's also a nub on the safety fin to be removed. That's not the statement. There's also a safety nub on the fin to be removed, and some mold lines on the pipes, nothing too surprising. And because the runners are reused from the R1A kits, we do like the 3 circular vents on the shins, which is a pretty important detail to the R2. And yes, that does mean that most of the R1A shins are underneath the armor, it's just slightly incomplete. A bit more subjective, but I do think it was a missed opportunity to give us the MSV style panel lines, as I feel like it would further balance out the detailing on the high mobility parts. There's even a little Among Us chiseled into the backpack that's so cute. And then of course, filling in the omitted colors. The included foil sticker does cover some of them, like the mono eye that I instead used the rhinestone on, these red circles on the forearm pieces, and that red segment on the backpack. What even is that, come to think of it? However, to complete the color scheme, you will have to grab a bit of paint, though it is important to note that the Johnny Ridden Zaku has had a fair bit of interpretations over the years, but at least for the painted model on the manual, it instructs you for some red on the insides of all of the thrusters, some light gray for these circles on the backpack and the cuffs, and then some warm black for the inside of the snout and the bottom of the head fin. Sounds like a lot, but that's just colorful MSV for you. A lot of tinier details like this don't need full color separation, and that's fine. What colors we did get do look beautiful. A lot of the hues have been shifted to a much warmer tone, which really lets that crimson just pop, and I really wish they had kept these colors for the Johnny Ridden Gelgoog. The sultry red looks great and all, but the Zaku's captivating carmine color just looks so bright and alive, and technically did get the crimson shade down correctly, but then again, color names are kind of arbitrary, as Char would have ended up being the Salmon Comet. Oh, and if you're aware of Johnny Ridden kit lore, you would have probably noticed that this was also a problem with the original Johnny Ridden Zaku and Gelgoog, just the opposite way around, which is kinda funny. Or I just find it funny because I'm caring too much about details again, but probably the latter. And speaking of the Crimson moniker, you do get an optional set of clear sticker decals. Plenty are left for your own choice of usage, but the ones with specific placements are these white lines going around the skirt, this white rectangular outline going onto the chest, these tiny white triangles going onto the bottom half of the shins, and these red target shapes for this part of the feet. There's a yellow 402 unit number that goes onto the left side of the chest, while the smaller white one goes onto the shoulder spike, whereas the large white unit number goes onto the shoulder shield. Johnny Ridden's personal unicorn insignia goes onto both of the red elbows, and finally for the right shoulder pad we get this RB, which stands for Red Blitz. Yeah, Crimson Lightning's a better name. If you're interested in seeing the kit with all of its decals and stickers applied, there are great images over on dalong.net, however, I just decided against putting the decals onto my copy, as I do plan on getting myself a third-party water decal set. Does that say simp? What the fuck? The inclusion of this sheet is quite nice for applying the decals really quickly, so it is actually quite useful for people who want a straight build. However, they will also come off quickly, especially if you decide to play around with the model and experiment with its many features and accessories. Let's start with this bracket piece, as it basically serves as a center for all of the weapons, i.e. a weapons rack that I actually find quite nifty. It slides onto the shield like so, and the shield weapons rack was an idea that originated from the classic Johnny Ridden Zaku. So I quite like this cute little reference, and it's a great way for storing all of the weapons on the kit. And speaking of those weapons, the Heat Hawk. I don't think this piece gets nearly enough scrutiny. Hell, it's not even the Zaku 2's Heat Hawk. Well, technically, this is the modern design that came from the F2 and was standardized by the Master Grade 2.0, but I didn't know that this respec was just okay now. The gripping hands doesn't seem to like them either. It sits in it, but it can easily slip. And I'm not sure if it's just because of how it's being held in the center, but to me it does look rather pathetic, and I can't imagine it cutting through any part of a mobile suit, let alone the armor. And for the final grain of salt to my aneurysm, ow. There's now this fuggly tab sticking out of it for side skirt storage, which doesn't seem to like it either. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fine, it does the job, it is mostly here for show. But for once, I'll actually give this win to the Origin kits as they look much nicer. Though again, despite my grievances, this is just pretty normal for a Heat Hawk. Luckily, the racket does have a clip up front, which holds the Heat Hawk quite securely and actually looks quite decent. Opposite to that is this tab for storing the all-important Zaku machine gun, and it's an interesting weapon this is. As far as I know, this design wasn't taken from any other existing media, mostly the Master Grade 2.0 design, but made much more to resemble the classic machine gun. The only part that really bugs me is the hollow as all hell drum mag, a common problem with HG kits except for the Hyzak for some reason, and something that I don't think will be too hard to fix with some plot plate. And what's neat is that you even get a spare drum mag for storing onto the side skirts, though again, it doesn't go in very well. The culprit very much is the tab and slot connection, but the side skirt slot is technically MSV accurate, so I'll let it pass. The machine gun itself has got a fair bit of functionality, a moving sensor, a moving secondary handle, and a tab on the grips that goes into either one of the trigger finger hands. And I guess the issue here is pretty obvious. The mismatched hand colors, as these two were molded in the weapons runner for, I'm guessing, spacing reasons? A bit of a peeving problem that could render some of these hands useless if the colors really tick you off. Though you can donate other rounded hands to this kit, as this is actually quite a common color. Although I will note that the left trigger finger hand isn't exactly the easiest to come by. Thankfully, we do get one more hand, a single left clenched fist that is actually a pretty neat inclusion, though it is a bit blocky for being rounded hands, and along with the annoying issue of the loose ball joints on the wrist, like it's not even coming off, it's just loose inside of the socket, it's pretty clear that a bit of work would do wonders for these hands, and I will be making a tutorial on how to fix these fists in the future. So if you're interested, please consider subscribing. But if you aren't much picky, then two trigger finger hands are quite a fair bit of fun, as the Zaku looks great dual wielding the Zaku machine gun and the Zaku bazooka. It's a pretty decent bazooka, again the standardized design from the Master Grade 2.0. I hope you're seeing a pattern. It functions basically the same as the machine gun, with the moving scope and the moving side handle. But there is one major change that this HG bazooka has over the Master Grade and the Real Grade kit. A hinge on the main grip, swinging the bazooka from hip firing to an intimidating shoulder firing position. It's one of the Zaku's many standard armaments, and it fits really nicely with the high mobility type, especially as Johnny Ridden's often seen using one. But there is of course another weapon that's commonly associated with this mobile suit. This giant bazooka is basically the same one from my last review, the 059 Dom Rick Dom kit, with its Master Grade 1.0 design, moving front bracket, the side handle, and the hinged grips. Which is where the only change in the bazooka lies, as instead of using the thick handle for the Dom's Yaoi hands, we instead get the new bazooka handle piece to replace it, now fitting quite nicely into the modern hands. Strangely, despite the common usage of the giant bazooka, especially as well with the R1A, this is one of the only kits you could get it from. The others aren't even anything new, it's just the DOMs with a section for the newer parts down here. Yet it was never utilized for any other kit, and the next time that we did get a giant bazooka, excluding the Thunderbolt version which is rather different, was in the 207 If Reached 9 that was even a semi-update to this build. And we've also never seen that one since. No system weapon set, no build series, and not even an AP Bandai kit. The closest we've ever seen is with the RG version of the bazooka and the interesting Quacks version. Though since this is the same bazooka anyways, you could just swap out the newer handle onto the Dom's bazooka, and now your Goof or Gelgoog or whatever you need it for has a giant bazooka. But that also means that most of my faults with this bazooka remains. The stubby front sights, the front bracket that swings around a bit too much sometimes. They did mold the scope piece in pure black now, so I guess the sticker makes more sense. And then the fragile scope arm that became the reason as to how I found out it was fragile in the first place. You can even still see remnants of my fix, and god, it's just so unfortunate as it looks so good on the model. And bringing in the 059 Rick Dom, you can see just how gorgeous this bazooka sits on Zeon suits, and it's really making me itch to get more of these guys for a Primus fleet. And to finally complete the brackets, you can connect the giant bazooka onto this large clip, and then the Zaku bazooka right next to it on this tab. Keep in mind the order of which bazooka to add in first, and to keep them both face down. Seeing the weapons rack complete like this is actually really cool. Having a place to store all of your weapons is always great, especially with this kit's surplus of them. It's an awesome idea that this MS can have weapons in hand and still have others on standby. A fun display, though moving the kit around with this on is a bit awkward, with all of its large shapes that can easily fall off. Luckily, it doesn't really hinder much of the articulation, which does use the 001 polycap system, so the joints are pretty simple. Dual ball joint polycap neck, okay up and down-ish, and a decent rotation. Not much honestly. Of course, the model does feature the moving mono eye accessible via this small switch on the bottom of the head. Such a simple feature, yet it adds so much expressiveness to the model. Though if I were you, I would widen up that track for further reach. Shoulders have a forwards hinge, followed by a full rotation at the arms, though works for a ball joint. And after getting the shoulder armor out of the way, the hinge joint at the shoulder block lets it move to a little under 90. Of course, the ball joint helping out for a full 90 degrees. As for the actual shoulder armor, the shoulder shield is pretty simple, with a rotation and a tight ball joint, so please be cautious of that peg. While the spiked shoulder has a nice hinge outwards and some rotation that in tandem would let you get some really nice shoulder offset, bicep swivel all the way around, and a single jointed elbow. Hope you're not allergic to that. Backpack thrusters are on a ball joint. It does slightly wiggle around, but it mainly just goes up and down. And I'm not usually one to say stuff like this because I know it is an HG kit and all, but I would have liked to have seen these flaps move as well, as stationary pieces can be a bit of a break risk. This isn't incredibly fragile, but I still do recommend to be careful with these. And then as for the abdomen, it uses an L-shaped dual ball joint, with a hinged socket on the chest and then a socket on the waist. Working in tandem, we get a really nice crunch, arc, tilt, just nice circumduction all around. However, the swivel is rather limited because of the pipe connection, which leads from the backpack to the cylinder on top of the skirts, meaning that when you rotate the waist, it just gets locked in place. Wait a minute, why are you here? Forgive me for going on another Sadi digression, a Sadi-gression if you will. It's just that this piece shouldn't be on the skirts. Instead, it should be bolted onto the abdomen, which would also allow for some better rotation, but then again, it would possibly kill the ab crunch on this kit, which I'd argue is the more important joint for nimble mobile suit. It's why this inaccuracy honestly doesn't make me mad. Sure, it is placed wrong and it sticks out too much, but I can understand that as it does serve a functional purpose. It pins down the front skirt's bar for it to hinge upwards, allowing us a 90-degree forwards raise. Moves backwards to around 30 or so, and thanks to the side skirts moving out, the legs also move out quite nicely. And the hips do feature that slight extra front and back shifts for a bit of extra range. Very slight thigh swivel, I can't even tell you as to why, and the knees bend just a little under 90, which sounds bad, but like, look at how chunky these shapes are. A right angle bend on the Origin kit and the RG kit was already really impressive, so it's perfectly fine. What I don't like though is how tricky the angles are, mostly because of all of this stuff that's going on. So the tilt and the swivel are quite limited. The foot raise gets off scot-free of course, but you can shift down the foot for quite a bit more range. Just please be very careful in handling them. These thrusters are on obnoxiously tiny pegs. It's not even a break risk at this point, it's just a time-based guarantee. Which is a damn shame, as these shins are probably the most important aspect of the high mobility's poses. But what's arguably more important is getting yourself an action base or any figure stand that uses the 3mm standard to plug it into the port between the legs and have your high mobility Zaku flying around as it should. I'll admit that yes, the articulation is a bit limited, especially in the modern times with the release of the Stellar Revive kit. For all of my understandings, it is still a 2012 mold, and it's just in that area of limited range where dramatic collectors would call it ass or dog shit or something equally cynical. Tacky bastards. But if you ask me, despite the limitations, I actually find this to be quite fun to handle. There's still quite the handful of joints which allows you to get some great poses from this kit. It's above average for this era of mono eyes, and with how modular the build is, it's great for kit bashing as well. And I often see people use this mold's torso and skirts for the custom Zakus because of how good they look. I feel like if a revived Zaku that used this kit as a base came out back then, it would have definitely been beloved for its time, as even to this day, this kit still holds up really well and I absolutely love it. It's not just a Johnny Ridden bias, although admittedly that did play a huge part. It's just that this kit is so charmingly nice, and I can't wait to get my hands on the other variants of this mold. It's got quite the fair bit of faults, yes, but those are qualms that are so easily forgiven as the kit in its entirety is so well made. You could tell that the designers really respected the rich lore of MSV and wanted to make a fresh and palatable update to the original 1984 kit. And really, I don't think I need to say much more. It's a Zaku kit, and that alone is enough to get a lot of eyes on this model. And the Johnny Ridden High Mobility Zaku may just actually be the purchase for you. It's a kit that opens doors to quite a number of gorgeous customs, be it high mobility or not. And it's a collectible that I think is a great standout piece, either to further flesh out your Zeon shelf, or you're like me and have a soft spot for the Unicorn Knight, or as the legends call him, the Crimson Lightning.